What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the OG family. Make sure y'all smash that like button, subscribe to my channel only if you want to, but at the same time, people, we have this top 10 scary movies inspired by true stories. Look, you already know how them goddamn scary stories should be. Let's hop straight into this video. Make sure
got a serious face on. At number 10, Child's Play. Okay, so the doll that inspired Child's Play wasn't as scary looking as Chucky.
I didn't
but
know.
The story that goes along with him is definitely spooky. It goes back to 1909 when painter and author Robert Eugene Otto claimed that one of his servants put a voodoo curse on his childhood toy, Robert the Doll. Apparently, this female servant had been abused by his family. This was, of course, at the time when slavery was common. So she put a curse on Robert to get back at the family.
you damn right. Put that curse on him.
Robert the Doll put a sort of spell on Otto, and Otto would talk to him like he was a friend, and his parents would often hear him having conversations with himself. The scary thing is, Otto's parents heard the replies from Robert that were made in a completely different voice. But that's not all. Robert would move around on his own from room to room. Otto would always blame Robert when furniture would get knocked over or when misfortune struck the family. Otto's parents would also wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of Otto screaming, and when they went to check on him, they saw Robert the Doll by his bedside and all the furniture in his room tossed around. Robert the Doll was eventually banished to the attic of Otto's home until Otto's death in 1974, when a new family moved in. The home's new owners also...
See, that's what's wrong with people. Why you ain't just burn the doll or something? Like, get rid of them. You put them in the attic? Y'all crazy? Are you crazy?
claimed that Robert the Doll would cause strange incidents. If you're interested, you can actually go and see Robert. He's on display at the Key West Fort East Martello Museum.
Absolutely
I probably won't be seeing him anytime soon. At number 9, Open Water. Open Water is a film about an American couple who were abandoned by accident in shark-infested waters during their Bahamas vacation. It was an amazing film that was shot with handheld cameras on a tight budget. Open Water is actually based on the story of Tom and Eileen Lonergan, American tourists who disappeared off Australia's Great Barrier Reef in January of 1998. They spent years traveling the world, but before they returned home, they wanted to visit the Great Barrier Reef. They took a day trip on a passenger boat where a crew would take them on 3 separate dives. And on the 3rd dive at around 3 p.m., they dove down together and were last spotted swimming about 12 meters down. When they came back up, the passenger boat had left without them. The danger of being left in the middle of the ocean is not necessarily drowning or sharks, it's dehydration. A day later, on another boat tour, a diver found...
What she just say, bro? See, I don't agree with that. It's absolutely the sharks. You know what? I don't even like big fish. You feel me? So I would probably, bro, I have a heart. Oh my gosh, I'm an amazing swimmer, bro, but I don't mess with the ocean. You feel me? That's not where we're supposed to be. We don't have fins and stuff. You feel me? Oh, absolutely not.
6 weights
I
on
could
the
swim
bottom.
too.
But still, the crew
Racist.
had no idea they left Tom and Eileen, who might have still been alive at that point. Several months later, a fisherman 100 miles north of the dive site found a dive slate scribbled with the words, Monday, January 26, 1998, 8 a.m. To anyone who can help us, we have been abandoned on Agincourt Reef by MV Outer Edge. Please help us. Come to rescue us before we die. Help. Oh, jeez. Over the following months, other belongings, including Eileen's wetsuit, fins, and dive jackets were found. The couple didn't die by shark attack like the couple in the film Open Water. Instead, they likely died from a combination of dehydration and drowning. In case you're wondering, what happened to Tom and Eileen sparked international outrage. No one even knew they were missing until Tom's wallet and their passports were found on the boat 2 days later. Regardless, it was by most accounts an accident. An accident that inspired the 2004 film Open Water. At number 8, Psycho.
Damn.
Alfred Hitchcock's classic horror Psycho from 1960 is one of the best thriller movies of all time. It was based on a novel of the same name written by Robert Bloch. And the main character in Psycho, Norman Bates, was actually loosely based on real-life psychopath Ed Gein, the notorious Wisconsin murderer and grave robber. The atrocities committed by Ed Gein earned him the nickname the Mad Butcher of Plainfield. That's a nice one. And that wasn't a nickname given lightly. Gein murdered 2 women and dug up dozens of bodies from several local graveyards. He took the remains of those bodies and decorated his house with items made from bones and skin. Gein was eventually caught and was found guilty but legally insane. He was sent to live out the rest of his life in psychiatric institutions, and he finally passed away at age 77 at the Mendota Mental Health Institute in 1984. There were a couple similarities between Norman Bates and Ed Gein. Both had obsessions with their mothers, and both their houses contained sealed-off shrines to their dead mothers, and both of them also enjoyed wearing women's clothing. But the main difference between Bates and Gein is that Gein wasn't actually a serial killer. He only killed 2 people and desecrated a bunch of graves. Bates, on the other hand, murdered around 20 people. The more you know. At lucky number 7, The Shining. So, The Shining is one of my favorite movies of all time because Jack Nicholson, duh. But yeah,
that movie's
hotel,
creepy.
it was inspired by a real hotel that's said to be haunted even to this day. It's called the Stanley Hotel. It's a haunted resort in the state of Colorado. The Shining is the story of a hotel caretaker who's driven insane by evil spirits. But you know what? As if that isn't already scary enough, the real story is a lot scarier. There are 142 rooms in this hotel, but one room has a terrible history. Room 217.
217.
Room 217. Room 217 used to belong
I knew that.
to a chambermaid, Mrs. Wilson, who is spending eternity cleaning up the room that she's trapped in. Guests who stayed in the hotel report that they've been terrorized by strange incidents. People report waking up to the sensation of something poking them in the ribs if their room is messy. Stephen King himself is also said to have spent a night in room 217 while he was battling alcoholism. He apparently had a terrifying nightmare that his son was being chased down the hall by a possessed fire hose. It was this stay in the hotel that inspired Stephen King to write the book The Shining, which is about an alcoholic writer who spends the winter being driven crazy by spirits in a haunted hotel. At number 6, The Girl Next Door. The film is based on a novel by Jack Ketchum that follows the story of a man named David who recalls memories from his childhood about a pair of orphan girls who is sent to live with their aunt. The orphans are tortured and degraded at the hands of their family members. All the while, David struggles to decide if he should intervene. Unfortunately, The Girl Next Door is actually based on a true story. 16-year-old Sylvia Likens was held captive by her caregiver, Gertrude Baniszewski. For 3 months, Gertrude, her children, and other kids in the neighborhood abused and tortured Sylvia until she died from her injuries. Eventually, Gertrude, her eldest daughter Paula, her son John, and 2 kids from the neighborhood were tried and convicted in May of 1966 of neglecting, torturing, and eventually killing Sylvia. The counsels of the defendants called the case the most diabolical to ever be presented before a court or jury. To this day, the torture and murder of Sylvia Likens is the worst crime ever to be committed in Indiana. Halfway there now.
That's crazy, bro.
The Hills Have Eyes. Okay, so I definitely didn't know that The Hills Have Eyes was based on a true story.
Hey, see, look, this the story that I did not want to be, like, you know what I'm saying, based off of a true story. Like, The Hills Have Eyes. Have y'all seen that? Oh my gosh.
Or legend that's said to be based on a true story. The Hills Have Eyes is a story about a family whose car breaks down in the desert. While they're stranded, they're targeted by a group of cannibalistic mutants. How could cannibalistic mutants be real? Well, have you ever heard of Sawney Bean? The legend of Sawney Bean is one of Scotland's most shocking legends. Alexander Sawney Bean was the head of a 45-member family in Scotland back in the 16th century. He left home with a woman named Agnes Douglas, who was accused of being a witch. Neither of them were a fan of honest labor, and they were said to have robbed and cannibalized an innocent victim. They sought refuge in a coastal cave where they remained for 25 years in hiding. The cave was very deep and was blocked by water during high tide, so it was very difficult to find and very difficult to enter. The couple bore 8 sons and 6 daughters, who then had incestual relationships, and they bore 18 grandsons and 14 granddaughters. The clan were said to have survived by ambushing passers-by at night and murdering them. The bodies would then be taken back to their cave, where they were eaten. Yummy! Sometimes body parts washed up on shore. This legend is supposed to be fictional, but many experts believe it was based on a real story. Wes Craven used the legend of Sawney Bean as his inspiration for his 1977 film, The Hills Have Eyes. In Act 4, The Silence of the Lambs. This date is one of my favorite Anthony Hopkins films, and that's saying a lot. Hopkins is a legend.
Now we all seen Silence of the Lambs. Come on now, he was this man right here was something else. You feel
Lambs
me?
revolves around a cannibal named Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah,
No one knew that the character was based on a real person until 2013, when the 25th anniversary of The Silence of the Lambs was released. Hannibal Lecter was based on an actual doctor from Mexico, Alfredo Bali Trevino, a surgeon who was convicted of murdering and chopping up his gay lover. Thomas Harris, who wrote the book that the movie is based on, actually met Trevino in the 60s while he was working on a story for a magazine, and he managed to score an interview with him after he performed life-saving surgery on one of the inmates. So he killed his lover for one of 2 reasons. 1, he found out he was leaving him, or 2, he refused to pay back the money that was owed. Either way, Trevino ended up in prison, and his murder was categorized as a crime of passion. He injected a drug into his lover's body, dragged the body into a bathtub, slit its throat with a scalpel, and drained the blood. Afterward, he sliced up the body and stuffed the pieces into a box. Harris described Trevino as someone who had a certain elegance about him, which is pretty interesting because the guy chopped up his lover's body. But that definitely speaks to Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of him. Interestingly, after serving 20 years, Trevino was released in the year 2000 and continued to practice medicine, providing medical care for the poor until his death in 2009.
What? He got out? That's crazy. You know what, man? That's crazy. That's crazy. You chop somebody up, bro. You brutally killed somebody, and you actually get out and go back and work like nothing ever happened. Like, Wow.
Close now at number 3, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay, so Freddy Krueger's freaky face wasn't based on a real life person.
I didn't want this to be real either.
But A Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by a terrifying true story. The movie revolves around a terrifying villain, Freddy Krueger, who's the spirit of a serial killer who uses a
This is one of the many characters that scared the hell out of me when I was a child.
gloved razor hand to kill his victims in their dreams, which causes their deaths in the real world as well. Wes Craven said he was inspired by an LA Times article about a family that survived the killing fields in Cambodia. The family made it to the United States, but the boy was haunted by nightmares, likely fueled by traumatic events. The boy told his parents that he was afraid of something that was chasing him in his dreams, so he refused to sleep for days at a time. Of course, your body won't allow you to stay awake for days at a time, so eventually the boy fell asleep, but his parents awoke to a scream in the middle of the night. They ran to check on their son, but by that time it was too late. The boy died in the middle of a nightmare. Bro. The boy had died from sudden unexpected death syndrome, a condition that affects young Hmong males and Filipinos. It claims anywhere from 43 to 100 victims per year. Basically, victims die of fright from their own belief of what happens in their dreams. This is where Wes Craven got his idea for a nightmare that can kill. Almost there now. At number 2, Scream. It isn't a Halloween month without Scream, a slasher movie that took a dark humor approach to tell the true story of the Gainesville Ripper, aka Danny Rolling. The screenplay for the films was written by Kevin Williamson, an actor who was captivated and horrified after reading about the tragic events that took place during the summer of 1990 at the University of Florida. Over the course of 3 nights, Danny Rolling murdered 5 students. He broke into the apartment of freshman roommates aged 18 and 17.
Now, the movies that we all love, bro, these were pretty much real people.
And stabbed them to death before putting their bodies in sexually suggestive positions. The next day, he did the same thing to another victim. Only this time, he cut off her nipples, severed her head, then placed her head on a shelf so it looked at the body. That's dark, bro. Would not have wanted to come across that crime scene, let me tell you. 2 days later, he struck again, killing 2 roommates, a man and a woman aged 23. The murders took a toll on the community. Universities closed for the week. Students took turns at night keeping watch. But Danny Rolling didn't end up killing again. Police didn't figure out it was Rolling until a year later, and by that time he was already in jail for an unrelated burglary charge. He was eventually sentenced to death, but during his court appearances, Rolling would sing love songs to his fiancée, Sandra London. He also sang just before he was executed 15 years later in 2006. At number 1 on our list, The Exorcist. This is the scariest film on this list in my opinion, and don't come for me in the comments, but I was truly disturbed after I watched The Exorcist, so maybe I'm a little biased.
Yeah, you know what? That's where, me and you're gonna have to part ways. No, I'm just playing. But look, at the same time, I feel like Nightmare on Elm Street.
But The Exorcist is based on the real-life exorcism
Let me know how y'all feel.
Back in the 1940s in suburban Washington, D.C., a 13-year-old boy was traumatized over the loss of his beloved Aunt Harriet. His aunt was a spiritualist who taught him how to use a Ouija board. Before his aunt died in 1949, Roland started experiencing strange things. He was haunted by the sounds of water dripping, scratching sounds coming from the walls, and his mattress would move on its own. His family consulted experts, doctors, and psychiatrists, and their local Lutheran minister. None of them could help. Their minister suggested they seek out the help of a Catholic priest, Father E. Albert Hughes, who got the permission to perform an exorcism on Roland. But the exorcism was cut short when Roland broke off a piece of the spring from his mattress and sliced the priest across the shoulders with it. A few days later, strange scratches appeared on the boy's body that spelled the word Louis, indicating the family had to go to St. Louis in order to save their son. They sought the help of family members who knew 2 priests, who performed another exorcism on Roland. During it, the men gathered had witnessed scratching on the boy's body and the mattress moving around violently. Roland was also in a trance-like state, during which he would utter strange sounds in a guttural voice. The 2 priests continued the exorcism night after night until one night, Roland urinated all over his bed and started cursing at the priests. His parents took him to the Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis, where finally, the Monday after Easter, Roland awoke with seizures, yelling at the priests, "Satan would always be with you." The priest adorned him with holy relics and objects, and at 10:45 p.m., the priest called on St. Michael to expel Satan from Roland's body. 7 minutes later, Roland woke up from his trance saying he's gone. Roland went on to live a completely normal life after this, and there were no other documented incidents or behavior. The cool thing is you can actually go to the staircase, the famous staircase from The Exorcist that the priest falls down at the end of the movie. Yeah, it's in Georgetown, Washington. I've been there. No biggie. Whew, I need a breath.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, I'm going to visit that shit like that. That's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Look, one of these movies, I would say is the scariest is Nightmare on Elm Street for me. You feel me? But The Exorcist, hey, that's a close second. because I mean I've seen many different stories on that being real. You feel me? But let me know in the comments down below how y'all feel about this video and what y'all feel was the scariest one. But like I always say, spread love because there's too much hate in this world. Love you guys. See you in the next video. Stay original. I'm out.